how much is Norse mythology based on real events? Like, did the apocalyptic Battle of Ragnarok really happen where Odin and Thor and Loki are all killed and the world is destroyed by fire and floods?
This refers to one of your cataclysms that destroyed also what you consider Atlantis or another island that was located somewhere closer to your current now Northern peoples that are still dwelling in the area are still somewhat used to the mythology. There was also another what you consider perhaps the sunken continent. Again, that also refers to some of your other questions. You're also already basically kept the idea of the sunken continent that somewhat located the northern sea, right? That also were connected to the British Peninsula, etc. Also to what you are now referring to, or what some have referred to Hyperborea. Some of those ideas, again, a part of pole shift, there was much different climate there, right? And there was civilization that was destroyed the cataclysm, yes. So those beings you would now consider perhaps extraterrestrial overlords, whatever, that you're now calling gods, same thing, had a certain battle, and there existed in numerous cultures and time that there's different names for those same entities that travel abroad.
Okay, so, I mean, what happened during this Battle of Ragnarok?
Well, there was the idea that different factions had different intentions, like out here, about how your planet should be ruled, right? Some were more of a favor of humanity having more of an upper hand, also in certain information, and some groupings also in offspring with those from Earth, they're mixed, there, so it was an abomination, the whole idea of intermarriage, and obviously also certain bloodlines taking their in charge of the whole project, when another one thought it was better to have a hands-on approach. There was simply a diplomatic misunderstanding, which later translated your mythology in personal family battles.
Okay. Do you know roughly when this battle happened?
Before you're thinking of your continent, so at least 12,000 of what you calling your time frame. But again, when you're asking timelines, remember, beyond time, there are numerous lines.
Okay. Do you know who the two surviving humans were who supposedly repopulated the world?
There weren't just two, there were many more.
Okay.
Those are just representatives.
Right. I know Loki is just another name for Enki. Was Thor the same person as Enlil?
Well, different mythologies mix somewhat different ideas and concepts of people on others, right? Especially your younger religions. But yes, you compare older much easier to each other than with we were. The Odin version or other names that were interpreted to is much more similar to the idea of what you consider Enlil.
Okay. And was Odin really just their father, Anu?
Again, different mythologies mix some things up, but roughly, yes.
Okay. Now, like, our mythology says that all three of them were killed during Ragnarok. Do you know if that's accurate?
Yes, they all died. Physically.
Okay.
They likely reincarnated according to such a new forms.
Okay, yeah, because I was kind of confused because I know that, like, Enki, for example, was around during the time of Atlantis sinking. So I guess that was another incarnation of his?
Well, again, things are mixed up in time frames, but yes, this was the same person likely another form. Also, another later storyline might have simply attributed certain ideas to another person that just come from the same blood lineage as those. Well, you had mostly two bloodlines competing. The one is attributed to Enlil and the other one is attributed to Enki, but overall, it was those are all leaders of certain factions, right? And you have different mythologies. Those that intermixed with Earth's population to some degree and were of a favor of sharing technology, and those that were of a favor of taking a hands-on approach and having a certain people as overseer, etc. Two different concepts. They're all more or less related, but nonetheless they were overseers, right? And they were in battle about how to exactly deal with your species, and those two bloodlines and numerous rituals from their bloodline and you were later referred to as gods, and then very often the individual that was the son of the predecessor also took over the rank and the function and in mythology the attributes of the earlier person. And then your later cultures, in this case for example the Norse, also mix a lot of those ideas up with their own understanding. Again, it happened millennia later, and as you're aware, when your stories set in your time frame are much later, there tends to be dilutions.
Right. Okay. What was Thor's hammer? Like, what kind of powers did it have?
Well, it was not necessarily a hammer. It might have looked like a hammer, but was more like not electrical, but somewhat an artificial device that was obviously a weapon, yes. It could open certain portals, it could fire what you might today consider perhaps a laser, but much more efficient, or just an energy beam, etc. Right? It could cut quite efficiently, and it could influence the weather. That's where the original mythological idea comes from, Thor making the weather.
Okay. Do you know what the deal is with the so-called 9 worlds like Asgard and Midgard and Hell surrounding a cosmic tree? I mean, did they really exist?
Well, yes, but they were not necessarily on different worlds or on your planet, likely just ships that are stationed in Earth's orbit, or referring to different planetary bodies of numerous other experiments, but we're not exactly sure what got mixed up on there either. It could also refer to dimensionalities.
Okay. Do you know what the Midgard serpent was that supposedly killed Thor?
Yes, it refers to our species and collective.
Okay.